residents and friends of Holland-Bukit Timah. Politics is about 5 years of service. Day in, day out, week in, week out, year in, year out. It is not, as the opposition makes it so easy to seem, 9 nights of speeches. Politics is about 5 years of service and not 9 nights of speeches. It is not about highfalutin ideas. The SDP, on the other hand, is full of highfalutin ideas. I emphasize the SDP manifesto. I have studied it late into the night because it affects the lives of my residents. I've studied it. It is nothing more than a patchwork of ideas, a rushed job, loose at its core, non-viable in its implementation, and dangerous to the residents of Holland-Bukit Timah across the board. There are disconnects in the manifesto. I would like to touch on 3. The first is the SDP wants to raise personal income tax to about 30%. Do you want personal income tax to be raised to 30%, friends? I don't want that either. And I have a duty to those residents who live in my ward, who work hard, buy properties which are not cheap, have it as a nest egg, have their financial planning work for them. I have a duty to look in their eyes and say that an income tax increase of nothing small, but of about 10% is not in your interests. So it seems that the SDP wants to tax the rich or the well-off in order to have money to help those who are less well-off. It's an attractive sort of Robin Hood equation. But the equation doesn't make sense because their manifesto itself checkmates itself. You see, my friends, at the same time, raising tax, trying to yield more tax at the higher income earners, the private property dwellers, they also want to pull out manufacturing, in essence, by and large. Now, if we pull out manufacturing, my friends, that would mean a whole slew of blue-collar jobs being lost. The SDP says, no, 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 they won't be lost because we want to transfer them into the services industry. But hand on heart, I tell you, it is difficult to retrain someone who is so skilled with his hands, who thinks with his hands, who is gifted with his hands, and suddenly to ship that person out into the services industry. He may not be able to make it. So what happens if he doesn't make it? SDP's decision is, well, we can move him out, move the industry out to Malaysia and Indonesia. I have an onus, a duty, a responsibility to the blue-collar workers within my ward to say, no, you shouldn't be working in Malaysia or Indonesia. Do you think that our blue-collar workers should be working in Malaysia or Indonesia? Do you think so? Nor do I. And this message is not only for the blue-collar workers whom I serve in Ulu Pandan and Holland-Bukit Timah. You pull manufacturing out, it affects all collars. The people with diploma in electrical engineering, the people with degrees in electrical engineering, the HR in the manufacturing line, it will destroy jobs. So the manifesto is internally inconsistent, a rushed patchwork, dangerous at its core, loose at its core. But let me give you another reason, a fresh reason tonight, why this plan, this SDP way of thinking is incoherent and dangerous. I say this because I have studied the proposals in depth, thought about how they affect my residents' lives, and I am convinced that this is something that should never be allowed to be debated, should never be allowed to see any light of day in Parliament. Friends, on Labour Day, SDP announces it wants to dismantle the relationship between the unions and the government. That would harm workers in a very real way. Faced with worst financial crisis in 2008 and 2009, the workers, the unions, and the government needed to come together to think of unique solutions to keep the workforce employed. So jobs credit and spur were created. What was the result? 1.9% unemployment. 1.9% unemployment. And that unemployment rate is much, much lower than the countries from which the economists SDP like to cite as authorities. USA, double-digit or near double-digit unemployment. Europe, near double-digit unemployment. Singapore, 1.9% unemployment. Why? A cohesive, consensus-building, strong relationship between unions and government. So who is the SDP trying to help? Workers? With that one line, I assure you, no way. Does the SDP want antagonistic union-government confrontations like the West?